Welcome back, focused learners. Today we're bringing you a brand new explainer that is literally going to change the way you think about every single thing you do. But before we even get started, I want you to do me a really quick favor. Wherever you're sitting or standing right now, just lift your arm. Go ahead, just give it a simple raise. Now, that felt completely effortless, right? Just an instant reaction to a conscious thought. But underneath your skin, a massive, brilliantly choreographed biological symphony just took place. Today, we are exploring the anatomy of an action. Get a load of this number, 40 to 50%. That is the percentage of a human adult's body weight that is made up entirely of muscle. Nearly half of your physical mass is dedicated purely to the machinery of movement. It's the biological engine that drives absolutely everything we do, from the most delicate blink of an eye to the most grueling marathon. Okay, let's dive into our roadmap for today. First, we'll cover the magic of movement. Then we'll meet your muscle engine. After that, we'll hit the sliding filament theory, check out the body's skeletal framework, and finally wrap up with joints and system disorders. Starting right off with Section 1, the magic of movement, and defining how we actually move.
Now, in biology, we kind of have to split hairs between two concepts, movement and locomotion. Movement is a super broad, universal feature of living things. A single-celled amoeba streaming its protoplasm, that's movement. The microscopic cilia in your trachea beating to clear out dust, also movement. But locomotion, that is a very specific type of movement. Locomotion is voluntary, and it actually results in a change of place or location. Walking, running, climbing, or, hey, that arm you lifted just a moment ago, those are voluntary locomotory actions. So a good rule of thumb to remember, all locomotions are movements, but not all movements are locomotions.
To achieve all this voluntary locomotion, we obviously need power, which brings us to Section 2, meet your muscle engine.
Now, what's really interesting here is how our body delegates its movement tasks to three completely different types of muscle tissue. First, you've got visceral, or smooth muscles. You'll find these in your hollow organs, like your digestive tract, pushing food along involuntarily. You literally don't even have to think about it. Then you have cardiac muscle, which is found only in the heart. It's striated, meaning it has this striped appearance under a microscope, but it is also totally involuntary. And finally, the star of our explainer today, skeletal muscle. It's attached directly to your bones, heavily striated, and most importantly, it's under the voluntary control of your nervous system. Let's see how this builds from the macroscopic down to the microscopic. If you take a skeletal muscle and cut a cross-section, you don't just see a solid block of meat. Nope, you actually see a highly organized bundle of bundles. The whole muscle is made of fascicles, which are muscle bundles, wrapped tightly in a connective tissue called fascia. Inside those fascicles are individual muscle fibers. You can sort of think of it like a heavy-duty electrical cable on a suspension bridge, right? Smaller wires tightly bundled inside larger wires to absolutely maximize tensile strength. If we zoom inside a single muscle fiber, we find the myofibrils. And if we look really closely at a myofibril, we finally hit the absolute foundation of human movement, the sarcomere. The sarcomere is the functional unit of contraction. This is where the actual physics of pulling takes place. Under a microscope, you'd notice a very distinct striped appearance. This is exactly why skeletal muscle is called striated. Those light bands, called I bands, are made of a thin protein called actin. Basically, think of actin as the scaffolding. Then you have the dark bands, called A bands, which contain a much thicker protein called myosin. Myosin has these tiny little globular heads projecting outward, making it the active puller. The boundary of one complete sarcomere sits right between two zigzagging boundaries that we call Z-lines. So how do they actually create the force required to lift your arm? Let's get into Section 3, the sliding filament theory and how muscles contract. This entire process happens in just a fraction of a millisecond, so stay with me here. First, your central nervous system fires a signal down a motor neuron. When it hits the muscle, it releases a neurotransmitter called acetylcholine. This sparks an action potential that absolutely floods the muscle with calcium ions. Now, normally, the binding sites on the actin scaffolding are blocked by a protein called troponin. But the calcium binds to the troponin, moving it completely out of the way and exposing the active sites. Now, those thick myosin heads burning energy from ATP reach up, grab the actin, and pull it toward the center. The filaments physically slide over one another. The Z-lines get pulled closer together, the sarcomere shortens, the muscle contracts, and boom, your arm lifts. But as we all know, if you lift something over and over, you're going to get tired. Our muscles manage this workload using two totally different types of fibers. Red fibers are your stamina engines. They're packed with myoglobin, which is a red pigment that stores oxygen, and tons of mitochondria. They use aerobic processes to produce sustained, long-lasting energy. White fibers, on the other hand, look pale because they have way less myoglobin. But they have a massive sarcoplasmic reticulum to dump calcium fast. They're your anaerobic burst engines. They're fantastic for a sudden sprint, but they build up lactic acid really quickly, which causes fatigue.
So, the crucial point here is that all this muscle engine power needs a rigid framework to actually pull against. Section 4, the body skeletal framework. 206. That is the number of specialized connective tissue levers in the adult human body. We call them bones, of course. Made primarily of a highly hardened matrix of calcium salts, these 206 bones take the raw pulling force of your muscles and turn it into articulated, directional movement. The skeleton is elegantly divided into two main systems. First up is the axial skeleton, made up of 80 bones. This is your body's central axis, the skull, the vertebral column, the sternum, and the ribs. Its primary job is structural support and protecting your vital organs. Then you've got the appendicular skeleton, packing 126 bones. These are your limbs, your arms, your legs, and the girdles that attach them right back to that axial core. Their main job? Locomotion. Take the rib cage as a prime example of axial engineering. You have 12 pairs of ribs total. The first 7 pairs are true ribs, which connect directly to the sternum with flexible hyaline cartilage. The next 3 pairs are false ribs, and they just hook onto the cartilage of the 7th rib. And finally, those bottom 2 pairs are floating ribs, meaning they aren't connected to the sternum at all. This brilliant design creates a cage that is rigid enough to protect your heart and lungs, but flexible enough to expand every single time you take a breath. Bones provide the levers, muscles provide the force, but to actually achieve motion, we need pivot points. Section 5, joints and system disorders, fulcrums and failures. And this brilliantly illustrates how form perfectly matches function in human anatomy. A joint is simply a fulcrum, and our bodies use 3 different structural forms. First are fibrous joints. These do not allow any movement whatsoever. Think of the rigid sutures fusing the flat bones of your skull together to protect your brain. Second, you have cartilaginous joints. These permit limited movement, like the cartilage between your spinal vertebrae, allowing your back to bend while still remaining highly stable. Finally, the synovial joints. These feature a fluid-filled cavity right between the bones, allowing for massive ranges of movement. Your shoulders ball and socket, your knees hinge. These are the synovial joints that make complex locomotion possible. But, as you can probably guess, a system this staggeringly complex, involving millions of proteins, electrical signals, rigid bones, and fluid joints, is susceptible to wear, tear, and error. Autoimmune conditions like myasthenia gravis can attack the neuromuscular junction, causing paralysis. Genetic disorders like muscular dystrophy progressively degrade the muscle tissue itself. Low calcium levels can cause wild spasms known as tetany. And then we have joint and bone disorders. Arthritis inflames the joints, gout fills them with incredibly painful uric acid crystals, and osteoporosis, which is often age-related, decreases bone mass entirely, leaving that once rigid framework dangerously fragile. It's definitely a sobering reminder of just how precisely balanced our anatomy needs to be. Which brings us to the end of our explainer today. We started with just a simple lift of the arm, and we've traveled through the fascicles, past the actin and myosin, deep into the sliding filaments, and out across the 206 rigid levers of your skeleton. So I'll leave you with this. Next time you take a simple step, will you be able to feel the millions of microscopic sarcomeres firing inside your 206 bone framework? Your body is an absolute marvel of biological engineering. Never take it for granted. Keep learning, keep moving, and we will see you in the next explainer.